Welcome to Money Talks with me, Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiambira. This is the show that addresses the day-to-day money conversations that we may find uncomfortable and sometimes conversations that we simply ignore. Today we're tackling an interesting topic which is about youth, the right to be young, the right to make mistakes, and the avoidable financial mistakes which many young people make. And in studio, we've got Nicolette Mashile, a leading financial voice on social media from Financial Fitness Bunny. And we've also got Penuel, Mlotshwa.
That's the one.
A money and life coach. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you
Now,
so
before we even start going into our topic, let's understand the mind of the young person in South Africa right now. I'll start with you, Penuel. What does it mean to be young?
I thought you'd start with ladies first, but let's shoot at it. We live in probably the best time in history as young people. We don't have big wars. Our struggles are more internal than external, whereas our parents and grandparents had to fight external wars. They never even got a chance to deal with internal issues. So young people today find themselves with so much opportunity, so many platforms, but unfortunately, a lot of those spaces either look saturated or there are so many monopolies that have taken over spaces that they feel like they can't compete.
Now, Nicolette, do you agree?
Firstly, I need to just say I'm no longer Financial Fitness Bunny because that's a trademark.
Oh.
Look, I think I agree with Penuel. I think that young people currently, even globally, are living in a very exciting time where anything is possible. I find it very difficult to explain to my parents how I make money. And that for me shows that there is so much ample opportunity for us to actually be out there, create things, be innovators, invent things. There's just so much that we can do. However, again, it is probably one of the most difficult times again for young people because it's where do I look, where do I start, who do I speak to, what do I tap into? Because you also then have those people that are on the other side of age who are holding on to certain things, don't want to let go. So we are finding ourselves in a situation where we're becoming a little bit more global. So everybody from every single corner in the world is coming together and saying, you know what, as young people, we need to stand up and do certain things. But you are finding that in your own native country, you are having to fight certain struggles that for me are unnecessary, like how are we getting into a position where the average age in parliament is 50,
Well, let's go back to the things you spoke about.
Yeah.
To do things, to make things happen, you need money. What are the financial challenges which a young person typically faces?
I don't know if I agree that if you want to do things, you need money. I think it's probably, for me, it's a common misconception. I think what people need to have is a willingness to do certain things. And I might come like I'm coming from a place of privilege because that's another word that people like throwing around, right? I think wanting to do certain things does come with you having some sort of willingness. If I could give you an example, I remember after leaving my corporate job, I really, really wanted a financial TV show, right? And I met up with a lady from one of the financial institutions. I said to her, please, can you fund my show? And she was like, listen, corporate, this brand, not gonna really do it. And then she said, I don't have the capacity. And I said to her, you know what, meet I'm Nicolette Capacity Mashile. And I literally sat with her for the next couple of months, and it didn't turn out to be a TV show, but it turned out to be a great opportunity of me doing financial education. So I think sometimes it's a putting yourself in the right spaces, understanding what it is that you want to do, and finding the right type of people to actually help you out.
So Nicolette succeeded in her venture. Now, Penuel, in terms of equipping young people,
yes,
are young people equipped to deal with the financial challenges? So are we equipping our youngsters to cope with the needs of an ever-changing global environment in terms of being able to see themselves as adaptable? Nicolette went with an idea. It didn't work out, but she walked out with something.
Yeah.
Our young people now seem to be primed to look for an employer.
I think this is where we're lucky because we get to make a bit of money off this gap in the market. The schooling system, unfortunately, doesn't delve into teaching kids how to truly become problem solvers, how to monetize some of their ideas. I mean, we've got kids on social media that create content, amazing content on a daily, but they don't make money. Our kids don't know how to export, as an example, which is not taught in schools. So where we come in is to factor in basically your question. Are kids being equipped? The answer is not the way they should be. But that's where we come in. And I guess for this show as well, it's saying, look, let's sit down, let's try and speak to young people and say, listen, there's a lot of things that are missing so that you can become a global warrior, so that you can export, so that you can make money, so that you can actually make things happen. And we're trying to help you with a little bit of knowledge that we have that we also didn't get from school as well.
Okay, now let's talk about the guys who did go to school and they ended up in 9-to-5s. There's plenty. And what are the typical financial mistakes they make? Because as a life and money coach,
Yes.
you encounter mistakes. What are some of the mistakes which people are making on a daily basis which have long-term consequences in terms of their financial freedom? Because ultimately, if you do not have financial freedom, you don't even have freedom to think and do some of the things you want to do.
True.
Look, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially people in 9-to-5, is settling for security. You know, you can only be secure as long as your boss still says you are employed. So that, for me, that's one of the biggest mistakes that they make. The second biggest mistake that people make when they're in a 9-to-5 is making the assumption that the retirement plan that the company is giving me is going to be adequate. If 6% of South Africans are going to retire, only 6% of South Africans are going to retire comfortably, it means that you've got 94 people in this country that are in serious trouble. And I mean, an employer generally walks into their space, looks at the general employee that they've got, makes assumptions about them, goes out to financial institutions and procures a pension fund or whatever it is, right? But how does it look for you as Gerald and for me as Nicolette? Because we lead different lives. Our financial planning will look certainly very different had we sat with a financial planner. So how do you then conclude that whatever your employer is giving you is enough?
Okay, so you're saying the young people need to question more in terms of if you're 9-to-5, am I getting the best deal?
Yeah.
Other typical mistakes, Penuel, the cars, the houses, is it necessary? Because as much as you're saying we're in a global village, we seem to be, emulating things we don't understand sometimes.
True.
Cars, houses, why do young people do these things?
There's a very nice phrase that obviously keeps going around called staying in your lane. But for most people, they don't even know what that means. People don't have a blueprint for budgeting. If I'm earning 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, this is actually the maximum I should be spending on a vehicle, on a house, etc. And to what you're saying, when you've got Instagram and all these other platforms that are putting pressure on kids, and unfortunately there are kids that are even living fake lives, and then other kids look at that. You have a 9-to-5, you're earning 15,000 and you're trying to emulate someone who's probably getting those things for free, or getting them from someone, it's not even theirs. So because of that, people fail to live in their lane. They don't know what their lane even looks like. And that's where financial education actually needs to be a start. Even before you start working, there should be some kind of a 1 week, 1 month course at least to just give you the basics. If you're getting 1 rand, only 20 cents should be going to your house. Only 10 cents should be going to your car, as an example. And get people to at least have that mindset of, I'm actually living beyond my means because I know what the blueprint, what the calculator normally says.
Can I just quickly jump in there? I think we, because there is such lack of financial education in South Africa, I think we do try sometimes to oversimplify the situation. What I find is that when people do actually know, you still seem to see the same problems even from people that know. And it's quite scary that in a country like this where people are over indebted, we don't have enough money psychologists. Because a lot of what we do when it comes to financial decision making is sitting with our psyche. What do I understand about money? How do I see money? How do I see myself in money? How does money validate me? How does money give me power? So I think if people can start fixing that about themselves and actually just getting to a point where I'm like, you know what, it's chilled, I'm okay driving a certain car, then you'll start, that blueprint will start to work. Do you understand?
That's so tough.
Because now you're saying to me, only 20 cents off your 1 rand should actually go to your car. And I'm sitting there thinking, but I'm a doctor, though. Surely the blueprint for a doctor should look different from some. That's what people are going to think. So you need to get people to a point where they're saying, I'm okay being Nicolette. I don't need to drive a certain car for people to actually see me as, I always say there's things like career tax. People have career tax. They feel like they need to live in a certain place, live in a certain house because of a certain career. Lifestyle inflation. Guys, lifestyle inflation is forever knocking us every day.
The pressure is real. The pressure is real. Like what she's saying is so key, because you get into a profession, doctor, engineer, lawyer, and you feel like these are the badges I need to get.
Yes.
I at least have to drive this car. I at least have to live in this neighborhood. And it speaks to a very tough topic, which is the psychology of money and yourself. What are you comfortable with? How do you feel about people's opinions of what you drive, where you live, what you're eating? And that we can give you the best calculators and the best blueprints. But if you struggle with that, they will not help at all.
Now, Nikki, you're quite active on social media. What's the mind of someone who's on social media? Because a lot of people spend a hell of a lot of time minding other people's business. Do they actually make enough time for themselves? Because I liked what you said, that it's about you. Do people know who they are? Because I seem to get the impression that a lot of people are living other people's lives and are almost substituting their poor decisions with other people. When you now get in front of a young person, what's the thing you often have to repeat to that person so that they get shook, you know, and woke, as they say, to understanding who they are?
You know, it's quite interesting. I've been on social media doing social impactful work, I call it, for what, since 2017, maybe 2016, right? I find that there's a different type of animal, and I call them animals because they really are, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Generally, people on Facebook are far more engaging. I actually really enjoy having conversations with people on Facebook. They are not yes ma'ams, they're not yes sirs. They agree, they disagree, but they engage. And for me, if you're going to have a fruitful conversation with a young person, they need to be able to have the skill to engage. If you can't engage, then let's rather leave it, right? You then move to the devil's playground, which is Twitter, right? And I think people on Twitter think that because it's Twitter, it's 160 characters, they're kind of shielded from what they say. So you almost, and the funny thing about Twitter is that what you say, people think that you are now stamping it on everybody, and they take their own emotions and their own feelings and they try and make that the standard. Okay, so you cannot buy a chicken.
So why is it my problem?
Because you can't keep a chicken. But it doesn't mean Penuel cannot.
Okay.
You know, not everybody that sits on social media is living and looks like you. You know, you have to understand that there are certain people that are in the farms that can buy a chicken. There are people on social media that can afford to buy their homes cash. And it's okay. You don't have to be that person, you know.
So I think you've touched on an important topic. We'll pick it up after the break. And that's really around identity. Because everything about your money is about who you are and who you see yourself as an individual. And as a young person, we need to start looking for our own identity. Join us after the break as we continue our conversation on mistakes young people are making with regards to their finances. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Money Talks with Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiambira. If you've just joined us, we're talking about the financial mistakes young people are making. And still in studio, we've got Nicolette Mashile, who's a professional social media activist, financial educator, and Penuel Mlotshwa, who's a money and life coach. Now, before the break, Nicolette, you spoke about the animals you get on social media, the types of young people and the personas you get there. You said Facebook, very engaging young person you can find there. On Twitter, you get those who are very opinionated. I'm the boss. Listen to what I say because I said it in 160 characters. And then you never got to the other one, Instagram. What kind of young person is on Insta? Because now that's visual.
You know what's surprising? I find that Instagram, for me, my personal, my audiences on Instagram and on YouTube are kind of very similar. I've got quite a lot of aspirational people on Instagram and YouTube, people that they not necessarily just willing to engage and learn, but I think the people they see it, they see the life, they see what you're doing, so they aspire a little quicker than a lot of people. I don't know, for me, I might be very ignorant and oblivious to it, but I think I don't put out a lifestyle that people aspire to. So I'm not, so my audiences on Twitter, on Instagram and YouTube are pretty very aspirational.
Now, for the young people watching, I've gone on social media and I'm a bit there. The young people you get on Instagram, it's the on fleek life.
Yes.
Perfect makeup. You know, you take 400 pictures and you choose one.
Yes.
Yeah, because the other 399 is the real you, and the one you chose is the one which best is outside you.
I rebuke what you just said.
Okay. Now, Penuel, you're a young person, and I found it interesting. You're a life coach and a money coach, and you're yet so young. What can you teach your peers?
I'm so young.
Tell me about your journey and some of your financial decisions. and how you can help someone who might be at those crossroads.
I just want to touch on the Instagram thing before speaking about my youth, apparently. One of the mistakes that people can make, I don't know if it's really financial more than just psychological.
Yeah.
I've learned to unfollow certain people on social media.
Amen.
Because it can put, to what you were saying about money psychology, it can put unnecessary pressure on you.
Yes.
And I guess if you look at money convention, it's one of the newer mistakes that young people make. Following people, it's nice to be aspirational, to be ambitious, but you need to somehow be realistic. And you'll find yourself depressed, miserable, feeling like you're not good enough, eventually maybe even taking your life for something so silly, but so psychologically important. So people must just watch out on Instagram of who are they following and how does it impact their own money decisions.
I actually mute people. I don't want your successes hitting me by surprise.
Yes.
Okay, so that's awesome, because I think you're now crossing over into what Nicolette defined as career tax.
Yes.
Where because I do a certain thing, I must have a certain thing. Now, the problem with something like a visual medium like Instagram, you see financial spending, financial activity of only one type of person.
Yes.
They should there not be an Instagram for bankers so that you can actually see people who are like you? Because I think that's where we're getting it wrong. Young people are seeing people who have big endorsements, millions coming in every day for being themselves, and they aspire to be that. How realistic is it? And in terms of your journey, Nicolette, how have you overcome, the pressures of social media, because you have many followers?
I think it comes down to what Penuel said. What kind of content are you signing up for on social media? You've got to at some point be able to make the decision for yourself. Like, for instance, I am not jealous of half of the people that I really aspire to be, but I am going to mute you, especially when you're doing well, because I don't want it to hit me by surprise. I don't want to log on to Instagram and there, bam, you've just gotten a new gig and now I'm feeling like I'm a loser. You know what I mean? So I would rather mute you, and when I want to see your stuff because I want to draw inspiration from you, I will go and find you. I'm not stressed about that. So I think people always write, whenever they see something great, they say, this is the kind of content I signed up for. I think people must curate their own content, curate what you want to see. And then when you go on social media, have a purpose. Why am I on social media? Am I just killing time? Because if you're killing time, then go look at the memes, go, those kind of accounts. How do I stay away from social pressure? Look, I've now learned to block. Block is my favorite thing in the world. If you say something silly and sideways, I will block you because you actually don't deserve me. I'm great.
Okay.
So please.
So you're blocking out individuals. Now let's go back to basics.
Yes.
Money. How can a young person start creating value for themselves? 26.7% unemployment is not a joke.
Yeah.
How would you advise a young person who has listened to Nicolette, maybe I should unfollow certain people who are putting pressure on me? Let's go back to basics, reality. What should a young person be doing to find their way if they don't have a job?
26%. It's even worse for the youth. I think it's at 55.2.
So what do you do?
You used a very powerful word, which is value, which is one of the things that people don't understand, the difference between money and value. They think it's interchangeable, but it's not. We touched on education earlier, which is outside of formal schooling. Try and learn skills that will feed you.
Amen.
Whatever those skills may be. Look around yourself, look for problems. I also wanted to touch on track record. We glorify and we glamorize people that have made it, people that are living on fleek. And not enough people are actually documenting the struggle, because that's actually where the real value is. And because of that, we lose out. We know there's track records in your credit history, maybe if you do business deals, etc. But we don't do enough of, when you started your career, were you documenting on a LinkedIn, on a Twitter, on a Facebook?
How hard it is.
Because once people, I know we speak about social media, and this is actually not what this show is about. It's about platforms. Get people to know what you're about. Do you sell chickens? Do you farm? Do you help people fix bikes? Are you a mechanic? Whether you talk about it at church, whether you talk about it when you meet at your mom's Stockfell, whether you do it on social media, whether you come on TV and you're like, guys, I love fixing bicycles. Start telling your story of what value you create in other people's life. Because that'll attract people to you, and then you can monetize.
So you're saying let's use the platforms available to make ourselves known and try and create something which can bring money and value. Now, I think also it's important, Nicolette, before you did off-air explain that you run a business. I think you need to explain to the young people how important is as a business person, do you have to earn millions? Because I think one of the misnomers out there is that if you're an entrepreneur, you're earning millions.
Yes.
I can be an entrepreneur who makes the same amount as you in your job, but I control my life.
100%.
How important is that message to get out there? And what about family pressure? Do families put pressure on young people because they look at the same platforms and say, look, ubani next door just bought a car?
Look, I think before I get into that, just to add on to what Penuel said about creating value, I think one of the biggest lessons that I took from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there's a portion where he talks about a lady who wants to be an author. And he says, you don't have to write a great book. What you need to do is you need to be a great selling author. And I think selling is such an important thing. But at the same time, you need to be able to sell value to people. You know, you need to be able to know what it is that you are bringing to the table. Yesterday, I was chatting to some employees and I said to them, I don't care what level you are at. You walk into your boss's office and you go negotiate your salary and you say, even if you're an intern, I want 40,000 rand. And then you give the value, right? Yes. You will land somewhere where you actually want to be. Family pressure in terms of being an entrepreneur and why people have a funny idea of what entrepreneurs are and what entrepreneurs do. Like, either people think that you are being very boastful if you say you're an entrepreneur, or people really feel sorry for you, right? I think if we start normalizing the conversations about money, all this will fall away. If we start actually having real conversations about what money actually is and people are not afraid to talk about, I mean, it's so funny that people are afraid to tell people how much they earn. I mean, it's not going to change. I promise you. You're still going to earn the same amount of money.
Even if you lie.
But what you essentially are going to do, you start breaking down these sentiments and these perceptions and these assumptions about how much money you earn. Because if I'm telling you straight up, and even if it's a high amount of money, even if, let's say, I'm taking home 100,000 rand, it's mine. And I need you guys to understand that it's mine. And if my family needs to understand that if I do slot you into my budget, that is a privilege, and you need to understand that I've slotted you into my budget. Family responsibility, that was always going to be there. We can't run away from family responsibility. If you are that type of person, if you've been brought up in that way, you do need to support your family. At the end of the day, we are trying to keep money. I think Penuel really speaks well on this. We've got to keep the money still in our hands.
You need to keep the money in the network.
You know?
Now, your parting shot, Penuel, to a young person watching you for the first time. What words would you share to them to motivate them or just maybe get them along their way?
The family thing was so sensitive. I wanted to say so much about it. And Nicolette and I are such bad examples because we have such strong personalities. And we actually have the ability to fight our family cultures and traditions and question and teach them what we've seen from the world to make our lives more comfortable. Young people need to take a hold of their lives. They need to understand that the whole world is watching. So if you feel you have some kind of value, tell the world what value you're creating. Find a way to monetize it.
Okay.
Do not sleep on yourself. Get education. Not schooling. Get education. If you want to be rich, go get a mentor who's rich. Go work for them.
And learn.
Buy them lunch, whatever the case may be. And just put yourself in a space where you're learning and you're creating value. And
Nick,
you're solving your problems in your life.
Parting shot for you?
Ask the right questions.
Ask the right
That's
questions.
it. People don't ask the right questions.
Okay.
People want to be known, to be associated with the person. They don't spend the time. Actually, if I'm sitting with Gerald, I need to ask Gerald, tell me about family planning. Tell me about financial planning. Tell me how do I structure financially my marriage. Those are the things that you should be talking about. You cannot be hanging around with Gerald and trying to take pictures all the time and posting them on Facebook and saying hashtag hanging around with the guy who wrote my mind. No, fam. Ask people the right questions. Take advantage of being in spaces and being in rooms that you never thought you were going to be in. But when you take advantage, it's not about taking a picture. It's not about hashtagging. It's about you asking the right questions, because you might never ever have an opportunity to speak to that person again.
Wow, that's awesome. So just to take out to close off, you said, let's budget with our money. Let's understand how it is. Nicolette, self-awareness. As a young person, how aware are you of who you are as a person? Tell the world who you are. Instagram.
Tell your story.
Tell your story. And finally, you touched on social education in terms of have an education which is real, which is life experience. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I mean, we've got two young people who are showing us the value of being themselves and making it against all the odds. And I hope some young people watching today will take some inspirational verses and quotes from them. That's it for today's episode. Catch us next time on Money Talks. From me, Gerald, Mr. G. Mwandiyambira. Keep walking, keep talking.